Happy Tuesday, brothers and sisters, Ask Us Nation. We are live in the Lion's Den, back at it again with the white Vans. Actually, you're wearing white Adidas. You're not wearing the white Vans.
Are these considered white?
Yeah,
They're like dirt colored. They're so dirty.
So nowadays that would be called off-white, and
Off-white.
it's a thing. It's a thing nowadays. It's sometimes they would call it natural. Natural would be the color.
My wife just calls them gross.
Well, it's true. I asked you right before this. I was like, "Do you ever like clean your shoes?" And you're like, "Bro, this is clean." And I was like, "Not compared to my shoes, bro."
Yeah, they're rough. Well, anyways, today we went over chapter 12, and there's some good takeaways. I think this back half of Judges have been just really awesome and really clear, and God has been really speaking through the text. And today we talked about just what happened with Ephraim and Jephthah and this whole dialogue of their hatred for each other, this jealousy and this grudge, and how grudges, the only way that you can combat grudges and jealousy and envy is through praising other people and their success.
Yeah.
And so we tackle that, and then we kind of go into the depth of what it meant for Jephthah to seek out these Ephraimites who were in their nation, and how to find them, and how there was like this cool little thing with that. And when we also talk about how we need to be dedicated to our faith today. We can't put it off for tomorrow. We can't put it off for next year, because over time, the seasons and the valleys will get longer and longer and longer if we wait. Like, we need to be steadfast today to make sure that we don't fall away from God. It's a really powerful chapter, and I hope it encourages you.
Yeah. Super quick, super to the point. Not as long as our other episodes usually are, but it's going to be a great one. So with that being said, Stefan, are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
Let's do this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live in the Lion's Den. Back at it again, going through the book of Judges with my good friend, Stefan. Stefan, how you feeling today?
I feel good, but I feel like you always get to ask me how I'm feeling. We never know how you're feeling. Remy,
Okay.
how are you feeling today?
I thought you'd never ask.
It only took 12 episodes.
Yeah, honestly. I'm doing pretty good. Actually, we've kind of made this announcement on all of our public platforms, so most of our friends already know. But for anyone that's following along, my wife and I are pregnant, and we are expecting in January. So that's crazy. I'm going to be a dad. I actually just had a friend that texted me. My last name is Davenport, and my friend texted me and said, "Yo, has anyone called you Dadenport yet?" And I was like, "Oh, no." Here they come.
I love it, actually. What up, Dadenport?
Oh man. So yeah, that's just crazy. I think I'm most excited just to experience a different kind of love, because I hear all the time from dads that like they understand to some degree. Like, I heard all this, growing up, that God, he like loves his children and that relationship, and understanding that, and I kind of got it, but then the second I had kids, I understood that there is a deeper kind of love that we haven't even experienced yet, when someone that you've created, you've brought into the world, is yours. And so I'm just kind of excited to experience what that love looks like, because it's only going to grow my relationship and my love with God, because that's how he sees us. So that's crazy, but that's the news for me. It's a crazy time we're living in, man. That's for sure. But
It's good.
thanks for asking.
Yeah,
I
man.
appreciate that.
So we are in chapter 12, and this chapter is pretty short, but it's awesome. So Remy, take it away. I want to hear all about it.
Short and sweet, brother. So we're talking about Jephthah. Jephthah was, as we talked about before, he was a, quote, mighty warrior that was born of a prostitute of the Gileadites. And he is this guy that was kind of an outcast, was brought back in if he were to take over the Ammonites. And the people are like, "We'll agree to let you lead us, and if we win, then you'll rule over us." And so basically, we go through this whole stage with him conquering the Ammonites. I keep saying the Amorites. I don't know why. I'm just leaning into it today. Just feeling it,
Feeling it.
Somethingites, right? That's how we interpret it. And he makes this weird oath that's kind of wacky with his daughter, and then that's kind of the end of that chapter. And then right after that, we see Jephthah now being the leader of the Israelites, and we see this conflict come up with Ephraim, and we actually saw this conflict happening back in chapter 8, I believe, as well, where Ephraim kind of comes and complains about, the choices that the judges are making and excluding them from the battles that are at hand. And we see him kind of complaining about it. And then instead of the approach that Gideon took with the Ephraimites, where he was basically like, no, like, you guys are great. Hey, just join me now. Like, be a part of this now. Forget about that. Don't be mad about those things. Just join me now. And they're like, okay, we'll do that. This time Jephthah's like, I'm going to just come back and kill you guys. And so really rash decision. But then we see that the way that they distinguish the Ephraimites is by a single word. I believe it's pronounced Shibboleth. I hope I pronounced that right, or I'm dead too. Or Shibboleth. It says, Shibboleth.
So from where they were, like the Ephraimites, they weren't able to make the sh sound. So they would say Shibboleth. And what the word was Shibboleth.
And then they'd get put on the burning stake.
They would be,
burn them at the stake.
Burn
them. So we just see this all-out slaughter, and it says that 42,000 Ephraimites fell, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And then following that, it says that Jephthah judged for 6 years, and then he died and was buried in his city. And then we see 3 different judges come to pass. We have Ibzan, Elon Musk, and then Abdon. And so we kind of see each of those very briefly, not a whole lot is shared about them. We kind of see something about 30 sons and 30 daughters with Ibzan, and then we got just a couple of details about the other judges, but just nothing really crazy. It's not like we have a longer detailed explanation of these judges, kind of like we've seen with the rest of them in the past. And so, that's pretty much the chapter. It's a pretty short one, but it's got some great things in it. And the first thing that I just took away from this is I don't know why, but I just imagine Ephraim is just a bunch of whining babies. Like, every single time something is going on where Israel is conquering their enemies, all you get is this chapter where it's like, and the Ephraimites complained, in the same way where it's like, and Israel turned away from God. It's like, and the Ephraimites complained again and again and again. And it just seems like in the given passage, in the context, Ephraim didn't care that Israel was set free from the bondage that they'd experienced for years and years and years, and the oppression they experienced. Like, all they cared about is like whether or not they got to be a part of it. They were more concerned about like their own glory and being a part of that history than they were about just celebrating what had been done. And like, sorry, Ephraim, but your history went down as being a bunch of complainers. Like, it didn't go down as you guys being these glorious warriors who were a part of Israel and fighting against your enemies. It just kind of came off as a bunch of complainers who eventually got slaughtered. And what it made me think about, kind of as like the first takeaway for us, is this idea of our own glory, what we can get from the things that are kind of going on around us, and like our own personal gain, and wanting that from the things that go on around us. But more than that, what it means to celebrate others, because that's what we don't see in this passage. We don't see Ephraim celebrating the fact that Israel had been set free and that the oppression that they had faced for so long was gone. They didn't want to celebrate the Israelites for what had been done, and they wanted their own glory. And so they kind of saw a different picture and perspective than the rest. And it made me think about like, how often do we actually celebrate others in our community and in our circle versus only wanting people to celebrate us if we get to be a part of it. And I used to work at a coffee shop called Dutch Bros Coffee.
Have you ever heard of it?
Have you ever heard of it? People, remember, we got listeners all over the place, and people in the East have no idea probably what it is. But in the West, it's a coffee shop. It's a super fun place. It's got a really cool story for how it started. It's different than a Starbucks. It's more energetic and fun. But one of the things that they did that was really cool is they would do like powwows, or they would do like a message before with the leaders for each shift to kind of set us up for success for each of the shifts. And there's a few distinct messages that have always stuck with me since. But one of them is actually in their creed, and it talks about like celebrating other people and celebrating their victories and their success along with your own. And when I reflected on my life and thought about that, it's just so true. Like my friends would get the promotion, they would get the new job, they would get into a relationship, they would be like, let's say pregnant or whatever it is, it would always be something else that was happening in other people's lives around me, or was like they were getting the recognition, their social media was taken off, their photos, people like comment all the time. That was when when I was getting photography, I'd see my friends post photos and people would comment like, this is amazing photos, like this is so great, and they get tons of recognition for it. And instead of me being like, dude, that's a really good picture, like that's solid, I wouldn't comment. And I would be more salty that people don't do the same thing for me. Like, why don't you comment on my pictures that they look cool and stuff? And I just was so convicted when I learned that message at Dutch Bros, which is the same message here, is just like, celebrate other people, celebrate those victories that they have in their life. Like it's less about our glory, what we can get out of it, but celebrating those around you. And I learned that when I celebrate others, they also celebrate me. But I learned more than anything how freeing it was when I celebrate other people, because it just took my eyes off of my own image. It took my eyes off of my vision, my glory, my kingdom, my throne, all of those things that I'm trying to accomplish. And it set me up for really having an open perspective of what it means to love other people well and celebrate them in those great victories that they experience in life, and just getting to walk alongside of people and just being like a cheerleader for them. And so that's just something that for me is like a good takeaway for us, is like, how often do you actually celebrate other people and the things that they go through in life, versus when they do experience those things, how many of you are silent and truly in your hearts you're bitter because you wish the same thing for yourself instead of them, which is kind of like, I believe, envy over jealousy. Envy is you believe that you deserve something that other people have that you should have instead.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you need to like praise others and uplift them. And what I see in this too is Ephraim, what they end up doing is they actually create a new problem. So they're free. Jephthah frees them from the Ammonites, but now there's a new problem, and it's internal. Ephraim, instead of celebrating that they're free and have peace, now Jephthah has to take some care of something else. There's a new issue at hand, and it's the same when we're not celebrating others and we're upset and we're jealous. Now we're creating a new problem instead of this like a joyous time in the success. Now we've got this new issue that we got to deal with. So Jephthah creates this awesome plan because Ephraim's like pissed. They're like, we're going to get you guys. So then they come and they start living with them. And Jephthah creates this amazing plan of, hey, these people, even though they're a part of us, even though they're a part of the grand people of Israel, they're their own nation, and they have, or like this own group, they're their own tribe, and they have a very specific accent. So if we ask them to say a word, we'll know that they're from a different area. It's kind of like, think about America. Like you have Minnesotan accents, you have the South, you have East Coast. Arizona really doesn't have anything. We're kind of bland. But it would be like this. So like, Remy, do whatever accent you want on this, but I'd be like, hey, Remy, say the word bag. Big. And it's like, all right, he's not a part of us. Burn him. Like, kill him. Like, we know he's an Ephraimite because he says the word wrong. Like, it's just bad. So anyways, they go around, and the word that they say is Shibboleth, and they could not pronounce it right. They didn't say the SH properly. They said Shibboleth. And so they found out who the Ephraimites were. And what's crazy about this is there's one word that decided if they were going to live or if they were going to die. They had one chance. That's one word. And it's kind of nuts, but at the same time, in the same look, in our life today, there is one word that saves us, and it's Jesus. But the biggest thing that we have to look at, same with the Ephraimites, is what accent are we saying it in? How do we say Jesus' name? And some of us, we've kind of talked about this in other podcasts, we use that name kind of like a clout. Like, I'm a believer. We use his name to build our kingdom. We look really cool, but it's not really genuine faith. Do you say the name of Jesus because you recognize you're a sinner, you believe, and you've committed your life to him? How do you say his name? And is it based out of true faith and you honor him, or is it because you're trying to build your own kingdom and you're using it inappropriately? So I just thought that was such a crazy thing to remember of like, man, how am I approaching my faith in God?
And I would even add to that, part of the takeaway that I got from that is like, people should know we are Christian by the words that we say. Like if you're going to be around like a group of people, and they were to overhear your conversations and just like the way you go about your day talking with people, are they going to take a look at you and by the words that you say that there at least is something different about you? I don't know if I think I personally take the take that we've kind of ruined the name of Christianity today. And so when people say that they're a Christian, that can mean so many different things now. And so it's less of an identifiable set of characteristics and more of like just a kind of name to say. But at least noticing that you're different, like you say things differently, like you're going through a really hard time in life, but you seem to be joyful. You seem to have like peace about this. But like other people that I talk to about these kind of things, they don't. Like they're pessimistic, like they're always complaining, but like you always seem to be not necessarily like always optimistic and not realistic ever, but like you seem to have a better outlook on life, and you always seem to protect those around you when like their names are spoken ill of, and you don't like to gossip. Like you speak encouragement into other people in life and those kind of things. And that's where like those are the identifiable things that make you stand out from other people, and whether or not you live the life that Christ has called us to, that makes us set apart. And so my thought is just like, if you were to do an audit on the words that you speak, are you someone that is constantly swearing all the time? Are you someone that's constantly negative? Are you someone that tears people down? Are you someone that talks behind people's backs? Are you someone that just focuses on the wrong things in life that Christ does call us to? And like, if someone were to overhear your conversations, would they be witnessing the Bible, like the gospel of Jesus? Because I'm sure you guys have heard the phrase before. I'm sure you heard it too, where like sometimes the only version of the Bible someone ever reads is you. And so for someone that doesn't know scripture, that doesn't know Jesus, doesn't understand anything about that, like would they be able to look at your life and the words that you say and identify that there is something different about you, but they want that as well? Not, oh, I don't want to be anything like that. Because I think that that's where we really struggle today, is people that set the wrong example and they say, I don't want to be around people like that. Because even in the Christian community, we got cliques and we got people that kind of talk smack back and forth to each other. And there's a lot of drama that can happen and so many things that like are so unnecessary. But I don't think that we are conscious enough about the impact that our words have.
Yeah, what you just said actually reminded me of something. There was this guy named Dave Stone, and he said this, and I'm going to quote him on it because it was just so profound. But he was talking about how Jesus talks about how we're the salt of the earth, right? Mm-hmm. And there's several functions of salt. It preserves things. It makes things last longer.
It adds flavor sometimes.
It adds flavor. But he said something that was so profound, and he said that salt also has a thing that we don't talk about often. It does something that we don't mention, and it creates thirst. And if we're the salt of the earth, are we creating thirst for people to want to know who Jesus is? Yeah. And so if you have a service and it's this grand, awesome concert, it's powerful, it's inspirational, all that stuff, but they leave and they're not thirsty for more God, you aren't salt. And
shoot.
So I was just like thinking about what you were saying about, man, the words that you speak and like how you act around people. Do you create thirst for your heavenly Father?
Yeah.
Do you create thirst for people to be more devout with their walk with Jesus? That's who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be people that create thirst.
Yeah. There's some people in my life that I think of too that are people that I would want to hang around because I know how well they speak of other people and how well they speak into me too. I've just like, there's a specific guy in mind that every time I see him, literally every single time, and even sometimes just out of nowhere, he's just like, dude, you're awesome. And I'm like, I appreciate you, bro. And so it's just like stuff like that where like those are the kind of people that you want to spend time around. And are you someone that people want to spend time around because of the words that you say, or are you someone that people try to avoid? Or the worst, are you just someone in between that doesn't even have a stance because you don't necessarily stand on that side, but you're being passive in what you can be doing more for the kingdom?
Yeah. Yeah. Something else that was brought up in the text that is kind of to this point is we've been kind of walking through the judges, and if you look at the judges, each one reigned for a specific amount of time, and then there was peace in the land for a while.
That is indeed correct.
What's that?
I said that is indeed correct.
Sorry. Hello? I didn't hear you. I didn't catch that. So anyways, in the very beginning, it's like long times. It's like 80 years.
Yeah.
And then in the last chapter, we see that one person reigns for 23 years, and then it goes to 22 years, and then it goes to 6 years, and then 7 years, and then 8 years. And then it's to the point where they're like, there's this huge gap where there's nothing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this in student ministry where you have a student that, is dealing with a struggle. I'm actually thinking of someone very specific. His name was Tanner. He was in my group. And he really battled hard with just sexual stuff in general. He had a girlfriend. He dealt with pornography. And what he would do is he would go through these seasons where, man, like he was on fire for God, and then he would fail, then he'd have a little blip. And then he would get back on track, and then that season would last a little bit long or a little bit less.
Yeah.
And then fail. And then it would get back on track, and then his season of on fire would be really short. And then it started happening where his seasons of messing up were longer than his seasons being on fire. And then it would get really long with him walking away. And then all of a sudden I would get like a DM of, man, I'm in a hard time. And then it would be a phone call, and then I wouldn't hear from him. And then it's like 2 years. Then I get a DM, and then it's just a DM. He doesn't respond to my phone call. And I think that sometimes what we do is we think like, man, like if I'm in this season, like God's always going to take care of me, which he is. And we saw it in the last chapter where he gets impatient. But also if we kind of play this game with our minds that, man, it will be okay. Like I can sit in this for a while. Like it will be okay. It'll work itself out. Like I'll come back to God when I want to.
Yeah.
It's going to get to eventually where your freedom gets less and less and less and less and less, to the point where there became a season where there's a 400-year gap, 40-year gap, whatever it is, where like, man, there's no God. And we need to make sure, like, if we've heard the gospel before, we can't play games with it.
Yeah.
If you know the truth, and you know that Jesus died for your sin, and you know there's a complex in the world that there is sin, you can't play the game. Yeah. You are not in control of your sin. You do not have it under wraps. You don't have it like contained in this area of your life over here. If you know the gospel, you have to live it out. It's not a game to be played. Like you have to live out your faith.
Yep. Period. I didn't want to add to it because you nailed it on the head.
No, it's good. And I think that this whole episode is just wrapped up in how do you speak about God? Mm-hmm. And how do, when you talk about God and when you pray, where is your heart?
Yeah.
Who are you? What's your identity in? Are you living out your faith? Are you being a true believer? Are you truly following after what Jesus has taught us? We all know the truth.
Yeah.
And we need to follow it out. We need to be people of our word, like we learned in the last chapter. Like we have to be on fire for Jesus. And if you're not on fire, but you know the truth, you need to find people to get you back on your path. You need to be connected to a neighborhood group. You need to be connected into church. You need to be connected to the mission of Christ.
Yeah, because I think that one of our, I have a few friends that comes to mind too, of like people who used to be like on fire for God. And this is one guy specifically, like this dude was a stud. He literally brought more people to our group than anybody else combined. Like he just, like every single time he just met another friend or met another guy, he was just like, come to church with me. And he brought a ton of dudes to church, and a lot of them got baptized and are still studs to this day. But I remember he always had problems with like going back to his old sins. And I remember that he would kind of have that same kind of gap where the first time it was like, I messed up for a little bit. And then it got like longer and longer and longer. And now I don't even hear from him, and I'm fairly positive he's not involved with church anymore. Doesn't really do that from the sides. But I just noticed that part of the reason why he consistently would be so far away or falling into that is because of his community. He didn't have a very strong community. He brought a lot of guys to church. He did an amazing work. But at the same time, when you looked at his community and the guys he hung with, it wasn't the guys that were coming to church with us. It wasn't the guys that were involved with our community and were going to our hangouts and going to our Bible studies and stuff. He was hanging out with still the guys that didn't want to go to church, that still wanted to be a part of the cool group. And that community slowly over time pulled him away to where eventually it just became the enduring state of his relationship with God, where it just seems so far away because of that community. I feel like we have washed out the term community now because we've just talked about it so much, but like it's the Bible. It's just too true.
Yep.
You know?
And I think that we touched everything that we needed to touch on in chapter 12. Like it's short and sweet and has a very specific lesson for us.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage you guys. How do you say Jesus' name? Like what accent is it?
Yep. That's true. And if you're from the South, you're in trouble.
Burn them.
Burn them. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being with us on this episode. If you loved it, if it was encouraging to you, if you feel that it was beneficial, any one of those things, we would appreciate it so much if you just left us a review. Super quick. Leave the stars. Let us know how you feel about it. Give us some feedback. It helps us reach more people. It also helps us grow and how we can learn from how we can do this better as well. So we really appreciate that. If not, you can check out our shop at askuswhyshop.com. Check out the latest merch we got. We have got some cool collections coming soon. We got the Hope collection, the Hope Club that's going to be dropping here in a couple of weeks. And outside of that, just be following us on social media. Be a part of the fam. Like, we want you to be involved. We want to get to know who you are. And we just want to continue to grow this community together. So with that being said, we love you guys and have a great rest of your day. Peace and blessings.